Hello, how's everybody doing out there? James here. You know, before I start this video, I got a thing from YouTube. It was concerning one of my videos about. It was about these two people that were white nationalists, and I didn't reveal anything derogatory. Would play any video of them calling out any kind of name, but I was kind of opening up the idea about how it's at a different level, and for some reason they seem like it wasn't age appropriate. And when I usually mark a video, I said it's not marked for children, and I don't see why. It seemed like it was not to the point it was being offensive. If something was pointing out that how some of these people who are racist and is for their own, but have a low opinion of other people, they tend to use these talking points, and there's some people that do that, and so some people will get kind of sketchy out of them. I'm the kind of person that just want to just share something that somebody maybe don't know. If I don't get a lot of views, whatever, and I've already accepted, but at least if I can at least make an impression on somebody, that someone out there that know the truth. And it seemed like when people who tell the truth expose what's really going on, it seemed like people are just, they want to just shut it down, and it is borderline, it's offensive, but you have people out here that do something offensive on other channels and much worse, and 10 times worse. Really direct with it, and it was just something that's really unique. So I've always talked about there's a totem pole when it comes to the human race. I'm going to kind of show a video. I'm going to show you a couple of videos of what I've been talking about, and it's coming from a biblical perspective. And I'm probably going to I hope not try to show too much, because I can get I don't want to get a copyright strike or whatever. And it's before I say that it's copyright, it's for a teaching moment for anybody that want to learn. But I'm going to base off what I've been telling on my little small channel of what's really going on. And the title is let me see, racial divide. How did it become like that? Now I know it's a different perspective, but it's from a spiritual perspective. And I'm gonna let you hear this video.
White supremacy after the Renaissance period. Johann F. Please do not get distracted. This is an example. I'm just showing that because our indoctrination on this topic has been so strong, we just accept these teachings as undeniable fact, which should never be questioned or challenged. As a matter of fact, we find that the stronger the indoctrination, the stronger people are willing to fight for it, not to be challenged or exposed. There are many different subjects like this. I just use this big one to get your attention. Please do not get distracted. One main topic that we have been indoctrinated into a way of thinking about is about the subject of race or skin color. We have been conditioned to think about the color of our skin, but really only in regards to two races. And this indoctrination is a very strong, severe one, because it is all about spiritual deception that has been taught through the flesh. About a month ago, I started this series about understanding Israel. It has been a very important topic because as we get closer to the tribulation period, we will find that this period is all about Israel and Yah desiring to lead them back to Him. We also have found that the many hijackers in regards to the faith have made it so that we have learned of Yah through them, while rejecting the important influence of the Hebrews and Yah's direct steering and guidance of them. Instead of us learning about the success and failures of the only people who have been led by Yah directly, we have been indoctrinated all is, you really come to terms with understanding why Yahusha said the path to life is narrow and difficult, and few find that path. We have been taught such a broad way, and because of indoctrination, people have just been in pure acceptance of it all. Anyways, where we're going in the rest of the Understanding Israel series is going to be on skin color, because as we move into more modern history, this is how the writers of history have documented it. And before we go there, we need to really get a handle on race. I want to clearly speak about this so that there is no confusion, and also in hopes that those that have been indoctrinated into Satan's way of thinking can humble themselves and realize the influence and shake it off. And we all must come into a more biblical understanding based on Yah's way, and also the way that the people during these biblical times that we read of and try to learn about, how they look at the world. In the series many times I have said that we have to talk about race, and we are at the time right now that we need to talk about it. So please bear with me as I take a brief pause in this series to discuss the topic of race as it pertains to the Bible and Yah's will and prophecy. Let's begin. Okay, so this subject is not new. I spoke on this subject about 3 years ago. The information and understanding has not changed, but the teaching needs to be updated and refreshed. As I have been making this series about understanding Israel, race continuously keeps being mentioned, even though I have not mentioned skin color once. Yes, I do illustrate them in the animations, but that is not about race, more than trying to accurately depict history. I have also spoken about the fact that I believe that a portion of the scattered Jews are of those that were taken captive during the transatlantic slave trade, and then brought to the United States and the Caribbean. But again, this was not about race. But unfortunately, this is all that people saw. People unfortunately see skin color before nationality. The people that were taken as slaves had an original nationality. They had their own culture. It's not about their skin color. But again, skin color is the first thing people see, unfortunately. That's the indoctrination. But you know what the crazy thing is? This is not unanimous among all races in skin color. When we see Asians, we don't say yellow people. When we see Native Americans, we don't say red people. And I did not make those classifications up. That is history, and that will be explained here. Race is really only drawn out and thought about between two races, white and black. And unfortunately, many people don't see that this is occultic in nature and mainly supporting the occult idea of the duality and the promotion of Masonic ideas in their black and white chessboard symbolism. But either way, we need to understand race and the idea behind it. Believe it or not, racism is a fairly modern idea. Over the history of our world, people did not classify people by their race or skin color. People were classified by their tribal names or by the nations they represented, such as the Persians, Greeks, the Jews, Saxons, Ethiopians, Egyptians, etc. This is especially true when we understand it from the Bible. The Bible does not speak about race or color of skin. That is not how the world was divided. But make no mistake, during the biblical times, the world was divided from Yah. There were his chosen people, who was Israel, and there were the strangers who did not know him, which were the other nations, the Gentiles. If you ever read the Bible, you will see him speak about the separation often. Now it shall come to pass, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to observe carefully all his commandments, which I command you today, that Yahuwah, your Elohim, will set you high above all nations of the earth. That's Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. Go therefore, and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all the things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen. Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 and 20. And he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. Acts chapter 17, verse 26. After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude, which no one can number, throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hands. That's Revelation chapter 7, verse 9. You see, there is not one mention of skin color here, or race. The world is not thought about by the color of people's skins, but by tongue, by tribe, and by nation. You will know and understand this very much from reading the Old Testament and understanding how Yah had Israel deal with the other nations. And then, if you go to Revelations like I just read, you see that in the end, it's still looked at in this way. All nations, tongues, tribes, peoples, all came before the throne, before the Lamb. So as believers, we must look at people based on how Yah does, and not how we have been trained to. Again, like I said, we have been indoctrinated to look at skin color. So let's understand race a little more deeper. The world being divided by color was an idea that originated from a white supremacist in Europe after the Renaissance period. Johann F. Blumenbach, a German anthropologist born in 1752, he died in the year 1840. He was the first to divide humanity on the basis of skin color. We can attribute much of our racial divide today because of him. Now, don't misunderstand me. Racism already existed before this time. There was already a belief in scientific racism, which I will touch on shortly. Blumenbach did not create racism. He simply placed a classification system that is still used today. An official classification of people did not exist before Blumenbach. His work is considered one of the most influential works in regards to race. He classified that there were 5 chief races of mankind. They are the Caucasian, or white race. He was the first to use this classification for people of European origin. He believed the people of the Caucasus Mountains were the most beautiful people in the world. This is, of course, where the term Caucasian comes from. Then he had the classification of Mongolians, or the yellow race, which included all of East Asia and some of Central Asia. Then we have the Malayan, or brown race, which included Southeast Asia and Pacific Islanders. Then the original American, which was the red race. These were the Native Americans. And lastly, the Ethiopians, or the black race, was the sub-Saharan Africans. He was a white supremacist and considered the Caucasian to be the original race. So when we start talking about racial divide, this is where the conversation starts from. He basically color-coded the people of this world. He was a racist, and you need to identify if any of your feelings or thoughts come from this man. When you identify people based upon the color of their skin, you are not speaking through Yah, but your flesh, which has been influenced by Satan. Here's the deception. This classification system is a grand illusion by Satan to confuse the world and mask and hide his true intentions and place it around skin color instead of him being against bloodlines and nations. Satan hates humanity, but he above all hates one nation in particular, which is the nation of whom Yah chose as his own special people. But Satan, of course, does not come in full with his intentions. He masks them and guards them and puts deception around them. And while he is carrying out his attacks, people are being used by him, but they don't really understand the real reasoning behind it. For instance, if you really think that people hated the Negroes in America just because they had black skin, you are under severe mind control and indoctrination, and you have to reprogram yourself in truth. Let's continue. So while we continue to learn about this belief in race and skin color, we go to the 19th century. In the 19th century, we have a French aristocrat named Joseph Arthur de Gobineau. He was known for his influence on legitimizing racism through scientific racism and developing the theory of Aryan master race. He wrote a 1,400-page book named An Essay on the Inequality of the Human Races. And this book argues that there are differences between human races, that civilizations decline and fall.
Right here, you white nationalists, that's the key book right there. This is history. This is what they don't want to. This is what you want to know. But they start indoctrinating children in high school, and they go after high school and they try to put that in their head. That goes young to 8th grade. What I'm saying is you can't avoid. What I'm saying is you can't avoid it. They're going to teach it in some form or fashion.
When the races are mixed, and that the white race is superior. He used the scientific racism theory, which was a belief that evidence exists to support or justify racism. Simply, racial discrimination, racial inferiority, and racial superiority. Scientific racism was common from the 1600s to the end of World War II, after the fall of the Nazis. Then all of a sudden, this programming disappeared from the minds of people, as mainstream news and education shifted the thought process. But these thoughts were definitely in the minds of people in this country, from the foundation that this country was built upon.
He's got 3 children, and evidently he feels that they will be accepted socially. And I don't feel that they ever will be. But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites. But the only way they're going to do that is by education and by bettering themselves, not by pushing in the way they have here.
But yes, those way of thinking was publicly denounced as racist. It was this man, J.A. Goubinou, that really helped legitimize racism as being valid. Now, there were many others like Houston Stewart Chamberlain, 1855 to 1927, who wanted to advance the supremacy of the white Nordic race in this culture. What I'm trying to show is that these thoughts were not uncommon. And the point that I'm trying to make is that due to the influence of men like the men that I just shown and others, this is where we get the division of race today. They added a psychological value to race that made people believe it was so. Basically, being that at the time, European civilizations were dominating much of the world through inhabiting foreign lands and possessing major breakthroughs in technology, they believed that they were obviously superior and that others were inferior. This was racism, and it led to horrible racial philosophy and eventually the events led by the Nazis that was said to start World War II. So please understand, any view of racism, black people, white people, racial division, all of it is a very modern idea. It's not more than 2 to 3 centuries old. It is not how the world viewed and classified people before then. Now that doesn't change anything, obviously. Knowing this will not change racism today, but it should change many people's understanding of where these thoughts come from. If you believe that your race is superior, it's because of the theories of white supremacists, starting from the 17th century. Looking at the white race as the ones that are able to get it together and hold jobs and be civilized is an idea of white supremacists. This is not a natural view that has been held since the beginning of time. Or the reverse can be said. If you believe that the black man is superior because he is physically more endowed, that is a twisting of white supremacy. You only see skin color because a white supremacist classified people in this way, and the world eventually adopted his thinking. And then formal education and mind-controlling programs like The Cosby Show kept the classifications going. You see, the powers that be want us to think in this way, and it's all for a purpose of division. This is racism, and that's the condensed history of it. You have to understand and place all of this in perspective. Before the times of the Civil War, America was much different than it is today. They did not need to teach our racism and the promotion of another because of skin color. Americans owned slaves, and they looked at the slaves as 3/5 of a person. Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution declared that any person who was not free, meaning slaves, would be counted as 3/5 of a free individual for the purpose of determining congressional representation. The 3/5 clause thus increased the political power of slave-holding states. Yeah, they thought of the Negroes as only being 3/5 of a person.
And they still do to this day.
Racism did not need to be taught during this time. The classification system was already there. There were the free and there were the slaves. Where the indoctrination came into play is after the Civil War. racism was actually taught to this generation. And if you don't want to believe that, just understand that they had segregated schools. The foundation of the country as we moved into the industrial age was based upon segregation, where people were taught to hate each other because of the color of their skin.
Yes.
You must understand that schools didn't stop segregation until 1954 with the landmark Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case that outlawed segregation in schools. So you have at least half a decade in the 20th century where people were taught racist ideas. Then we had their public Boule member, Michael King, used as a bridge and an enforcer of the idea that the hatred that people had against the Negroes was just about skin color and nothing else. And then they passed the civil rights legislation that prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The country looked at this as all about color and racial identity.
So you see, even though it did it back in that time, but there was still racial tension even after they went through it, the 60s and 70s, and there were still places in America that still segregated. In parts of the South was still segregated all the way up to now. They still bridge between black kids and white kids all the way up to now, all in different parts of the United States. And you trying to tell me, and it's like, oh, that's just history. But but this is happening now. It's something that from the history is happening now. The segregated schools, segregated neighborhoods are now in mostly poor area. If you go in different parts of the country, you got in different parts of the country, it's mixed in black and white. But in some areas, it's just black and black, and black only. And they take secondary to third residents trying to get access to different things. This based on that. Then it moves into politics. This is why they don't want to talk about this. And you shift from no matter if it's a Republican or Democrat. Now we don't know who when you look at the demographic at that time, who didn't want to be integrated with the Negro. We don't know what affiliation, what association when it comes to Christianity, if they were Baptist, they were Pentecostal, whatever. They were segregated, and this is something that they don't have to talk about. That they figure like it was just water over. But you see, why is it that all the way up until 2022, you got teenagers and children still push because it's still another generation. And you hear about a black child getting called out of their name, or you might say that someone might call a white person out, young white person. Where did this come? It's generation after generation. That's why I say it's not going away. It's a spirit that came from the 17th century, and you still trying it like that. Let's get back.
And then the next generations were taught about it in schools. We were taught about Michael King and his "I Have a Dream" speech. We were taught about it in our television shows.
What are you? From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring from the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California.
We were taught about it through our news and our politics. Race and color has been our primary way of thought. When you talk about skin color, you're only speaking about it because you have been indoctrinated to look at the world in this way. But again, this is not done specifically with all races of colors, but you will mostly always see this thought centered around the Negroes. Let me ask you, if you're a Caucasian and your family came to America from Europe, are all of you the same tribe of people? Do you not classify yourselves as Irish or Italian or Polish or something else? Well, they did back in the early 20th century after coming in to Ellis Island. Yeah, there was different classifications of Caucasians. Or what about when we speak about Asians? Do we just say Asians? Or to really understand who Japanese or the Chinese. Yeah, the different classifications based on their nationality. But for some reason, when we identify the race we call black people, we just look at them as Africans. Africa is basically taught to us as one type of people that come from there. Black people. Black people are African. We all are a part of the same heritage. That's it. This is unfortunately how people think. Yes, this is ignorant, but this is based upon the indoctrination of our education system.
Exactly.
I mean, I want you to really think about all the world history we have learned about in schools. How much of history have you been taught about Africa? We are basically taught that these people are all the same and their history is unimportant. I really want you to think about it. Even now, with all of this knowledge, with all of these DNA tests and all of our technology, how come it is still so that the people that descend from those that were taken in the transatlantic slave trade still have not been told where they come from and to what people they belong to? They have basically told us and taught us that we were just slaves. That's the extent to our history. We are taught that where we are defines us, and our heritage before slavery is not important. With all of our knowledge, why is it that these people have not been able to have an identity outside of the land that they were sent to as slaves? I mean, the title African American is racist by itself. Look at this. This man is an African American, but he has a different skin color. He was born in Africa, but moved to the United States, and now is a citizen. So he is African American. But we use the term African American to only talk about the color of people's skins, which is black. Again, this is indoctrination. I really want you to ask yourself, why is it that African American history is only about history after slavery and not before? Why were the slaves that were brought here not able to read the Bible on their own? If the Bible was such a tool of control for the Negroes, why didn't the slave masters educate them fully so they can learn how to read the Bibles for themselves? The point I'm making is that when we look at Africa and black people, if you do not understand the world through biblical eyes, you are looking at it through tainted eyes that only see skin color. And this view that you may see things from severely stops you from understanding big topics of truth, like the Understanding Israel series, that have so much more to do with the national identity and heritage of a people more than the color of their skin. During this series of Understanding Israel, when people would comment about race, and why am I talking about skin color, I would make the same point to them that often just went over their heads. I would tell them that until they stop looking at the world through the vantage point Satan has created for them, they would not understand this topic. I was not talking about skin color, but I spoke about a group of people that are a nation of people. They were the Negroes. There was a reason for that name. And the Negroes are not the only tribe of people that existed in Africa. Africa is a huge continent, and there are many different tribes of people there. It is a fact that other tribes in Africa assisted the Europeans in identifying the Negroes to be sold in slavery. Those involved in the slave trade did not just go up and grab up random people based on skin color. But because you have been indoctrinated into these thoughts surrounding race and skin color, this is unfortunately the primary reason why you may think this. And what is desired is for people to remove themselves away from this way of thinking if you want to understand things from the ways of the Bible. Yah did not separate the world by skin color, but by nations. And the gospel is not to be preached to all skin colors, but to all nations. And in the last days, while the gospel is preached to all nations, Yah is still dealing with his nation he chose. This is not about racial superiority or putting people at a higher level than anyone else. This is about looking at the world through biblical eyes and not from satanically led views that we have been indoctrinated to hold. Please understand that. This is very important. And you have to be humble enough to recognize that your view of the world has been satanically tainted. Now, what I'm going to do is go over the history of the nations that I discussed 3 years ago as well, because it will help provide a strong foundation of the world from Yah's history rather than Satan's indoctrination. So let's understand the history of the nations. start post-flood with Noah. Noah had 3 sons. They were Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And from these 3 sons, the world was repopulated. So if we're to really classify people today, it would be proper to classify people according to this. There are the Semites, the Hamites, and the Japhites. Again, not according to the color of skin, but according to tribe. Now, the book of Genesis really provides a good basis of understanding of who these people are. When we read Genesis and we see those chapters about the sons of men, we often can just skim over that as useless info. But if we decide to dig deep to gain more understanding, we can really grow in knowledge. That info explains tribes of people, and if you follow the history of those tribes, you can follow the history of the world. This is why I speak of the Bible as the most known history book. We'll start with the Hamites, the descendants of Ham. I start with them because they are the beginning of recorded ancient history. They were the tribes of the great civilizations. Let's track it. Genesis chapter 10. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Zeba, Havilah, Zapta, Rama, Sabteca, and Nimrod. All of these sons were Cushites. They dwelt in this land, northeastern Africa, in the Nile Valley, south of Egypt. They spread along the tracts extending from the higher Nile to the Euphrates and the Tigris River. Of Cush's notable sons, we know of Nimrod, the father god of paganism. Chapter 10 says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. If you look for the definition of Shinar, you will see this is another name for Sumer, or Samaria, later known as Babylon, after the Tower of Babel. After Cush, the other son of Ham was Mizraim. Mizraim is the Hebrew word for Egypt. The word Mizraim is plural form, meaning upper and lower Egypt. They were the second world empire after Samaria, Babylon. Verse 13 of chapter 10 says, Mizraim begot Ludim, Anamim, Labahim, Nephtahim, Pathrusim, and Casluhim, from whom came the Philistines and Caphtorim. So you see, these tribes were where the Philistines came from, a tribe of people who were one time major opponents of the Israelites until they were wiped out. Let's cover another son of Ham, who was Canaan. This is obviously where the land of Canaan came from, and they were driven out of their land by Joshua and the Israelites. The Canaanites are what we know today as the Africans. It is written in the Babylonian Talmud, for when the Africans came to plead against the Jews before Alexander of Macedon, they said, Canaan belongs to us, as it is written, the land of Canaan with the coast thereof, and Canaan was the ancestor of these people, i.e. ourselves. Basically, in 332 BC, when Alexander the Great conquered the land of Israel, the Africans came to Alexander claiming that the land of Canaan belonged to them. Verse 15 says, Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, the Jebusite, the Amorite, and the Girgashite, the Hivite, the Archite, and the Sinite, the Arvadite, the Zemarite, and the Hamathite.
I'm gonna stop it right here. He's called Truth Unveiled, but I want to address this message, and he got another message in here, and this is to all black men. This is another.
Ronald Beach served our
Then
nation.
I'm gonna show you something,
Now he's ready to serve
How is
us
it tied
in the
together?
State House.
and I'm gonna give you the reason why.
Oh yeah,
Um,
so that is the that's at how
You know,
that's on
the
Howard's
reparation
campus.
talk you might hear some people talk
She
about,
carried on the family
particularly
legacy.
black people talk about,
We were blown away.
and
I not only was a student in
I'm gonna give a
undergrad,
version
but
of
I was
that.
there for 20 years, so
When determining the amount of welfare in the nation.
Show you the history. Watch this. Oh, shoot. Dang it.
In that last video, I have a lot to say about the war against men. damage and has been attacked the most directly. There has been an all-out assault against the black men, especially in America. It has been an unspoken war that has been waged against us for many generations. And as a black man myself, it is something I cannot leave unchecked. Now, as I said in that last video, now, if you haven't watched that video, please watch that first before you watch this, because some things I say here is based on assuming the foundation was already laid in that first video. But again, in that first video, I spoke about these two latest movies that have come out. Women Warriors, proving they are just as strong as men or even stronger. We have Black Panther 2, where the trailer just showed women. If you remember in the first movie, the king was guarded by a female army. We have this other movie about other women warriors, where even in the clip, one of the women shows that she was stronger than a man. We even have the Biden administration silently working against black men in this country without saying an actual word that he's doing it. I mean, look at all of his appointments. He has promoted black women to high offices, and it seems one of the criteria they must have is that they're not married to black men.
Acutely aware that my presence at this podium represents a few firsts. I am a black, gay, immigrant woman.
There have been news articles about why more black women should marry white men. Most of our heroes in the black community, our actors, our singers, our rappers, athletes, social activists, etc., they all have been emasculated or are homosexual. There is no room for the traditional black man in society today. There is an all-out assault on black men that we aren't really able to bring up because people either want to reduce these feelings as either sexist, racist, homophobic, or all of it combined. In that last video, I went over the whole agenda and what us as men should be. But what needs to be done and said here is how we got here specifically in the black community. So I needed to tackle this in a specific video so that anyone that does not understand this can clearly gain more perspective, and our black men can understand that they have been attacked and emasculated in order to be conquered. You are conquered. Every aspect of our current black culture in America has been designed and created to present the world with a subdued black man, and it is very necessary that at this point you understand this. So we're going to talk about it. Let's begin. So let's go back in time so we can better understand where we are today. After slavery was abolished, blacks in America tried to establish lives for themselves. The period of the Great Migration was one of the largest movements of people in the United States history. Approximately 6 million black people moved from the American South to northern, midwestern, and western states, roughly from 1910s until the 1970s. To escape racial violence and pursue economic and educational opportunities, black Southerners began to migrate all over the country. The first Great Migration in 1910 to 1940 had black Southerners relocate to northern and midwestern cities, including New York, Chicago, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. Now, what's important to understand is that during these times, the black family was statistically strong. The men brought their families around the country, seeking opportunities for themselves so they can support their families. Though they dealt with a great deal of racism and oppression, those that had families held those families intact. According to the United States Census Bureau data, in 1910, black children raised in two-parent households was at 72.5%, and only 13% were raised by mothers only. For contrast, white children raised in two-parent households was almost at 90%, and only 5% of the households were raised by single mothers. There's an obvious gap there, I know, but not as big as the gap that we'll see. If you follow these statistics through time, through the Great Depression and the first Great Migration, the percentages still held up. We are talking about 30 years of strong families raised by both parents, both mom and dad, in the home. So for me, we're going back about 3 generations to my great-grandparents, and for the most part, the black homes and families were still intact. Now, this is where I want you to pay attention. In the 1960s, right before the Civil Rights Act, the percentages started to shift. The homes of black children raised by both parents dropped by 5% to 67.7%, and black children raised by single mothers raised 5% to 18.2%. Now, in white households in the 1960s, that families got stronger. The two-parent household was now above 91%, and still only 5% of households were raised by a single mother. We will go over why, but just stay with these statistics, because over the next 20 years, we will see the biggest shift in the black family. In the 1980s, during the biggest point of inflation in the United States, when we had a major recession, the black family collapsed. The homes of black children raised by both parents dropped by 20% to 47.1%, and black children raised by single mothers raised almost 20%, to 37.3%. Now, to gain more understanding and understand that these trends were based on factors outside of the family, particularly economics, just understand that the strong white families also saw a decline. Their two-parent household declined 7% to 84%, and the percentage of households raised by single mothers grew by 6% to 11.7%. So, I gave you a lot of numbers, but the picture needed to be painted for you. By the 1980s, the homes in the black community that single mothers raising them represented almost 40% of the community. In 20 years, 20% of black men were removed from the black households. Well, let me ask you, do you really think it was solely because our parents and grandparents were deadbeats? No, they were attacked. The system that this country was built upon was created to assimilate black people in the country while making sure that black men never gained ground or dominance. The Great Migration was used to assimilate black people around the country, promising opportunities and providing them. By the mid-1960s, half of all blacks had moved into the middle class. But by this time, that progress seemed to be stalling. The rise in black income relative to that of whites was steady throughout the 50s. But after the Civil Rights Act, this relativity was halting fast. The reason for father's absence in the black home ranged from the existence of welfare regulation that forced the father out of the home, a man's inability to secure gainful employment to support his family.
Struggling with a sore throat, the former governor criticized the Carter administration
1980.
for fighting inflation with
1980.
unemployment, especially black unemployment.
Not 1880. 1980.
I'm trying to tell you. I am trying to tell you that I know now there is no program or promise that a president can make that the federal government can come in and wave a wand and do this.
There was tensions in the male-female relationship as feminism began to rise, and the fact that a majority of black children were beginning to be born out of wedlock.
Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. One. The rest of you don't plan to get married. Why don't you plan to get
1986.
married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility, and then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so you know, it really male figures are not substantially important in the family.
Now that last factor was one of the biggest challenges for black men. In a world that was crippling him, the young black man wanted to prove his manhood by creating a child. But American society denied him the economic resources to support that child. Lack of economic opportunities led to poverty in the black community.
Let me stop this right here. Now you see what happened, how it was strategically planned, and so it doesn't matter. And you have people, it would make a difference. That's why they mention reparations, because mentally it would work, would help the black family, but it would restore the confidence. And
where there is poverty and people struggling to survive, it spurs violence and crime. many black men returned to crime as that was their only opportunity. The movie Dead Presidents depicted this well. When the young brother did his thing in the war and came back to no opportunities, he tried as hard as he could, but he was not able to provide for his family. But a pimp in the neighborhood was able to provide because he wasn't dependent on the system. So that brother Lorenz Tate saw that, and so he decided that he was going to go into crime, and it didn't work out for him.
Be right back.
With limited opportunities, black men resorted to crime. And though white-collar crime back then was estimated to cost society over $100 billion a year, compared to the $2.5 billion from street crimes, the prisons were occupied largely by lower-income black Americans. During the 70s, whites were jailed at a rate of 43.5 per 100,000, while blacks were imprisoned 367.5 per 100,000. The sentences of blacks averaged 20% longer than whites. Now check this. During the 1970s, the unemployment rate for blacks increased dramatically, but so did the prison population. There was a direct correlation. Lack of economic opportunities and extreme poverty led black men to desperation and crime. I mean, today, where marijuana is able to be smoked freely all throughout this country, I mean, I was in New York and I saw people smoking weed in front of cops. It was crazy. But back then, people's whole lives are being ruined for an ounce of weed. Those laws back then were put in place for a purpose. Of all new employees entering the private industry between 1974 and 1977, 53% were white women, 26% were white men, 5% were black women, and black men experienced no net gain in their numbers, which is why they needed laws like affirmative action. I mean, I really can go in deep with all those statistics during that period. I'm just really
They answer your question about affirmative action.
What happened to the black man in America was not more about the lack of desire of the black man or his laziness, but lack of opportunities and then trying to find a place in a society that did not want them. The system was not created for black men, and at no time did it ever want to see the thriving of black men unless it filled the stereotypes that it desired. Not
And let me stop right here. And if any black man is listening, whether you're conservative or non-conservative, it's because you were a black man. So it has, even the ones who came back from war, trying to be a productive citizen, you had to go through some obstacles. Just saying.
to mention that if they were in poverty and sought after welfare, the welfare programs would not assist women who had men in the house. These were called man-of-the-house rules, and they sought to enforce social norms about who was morally deserving of welfare. That's how they say it.
We will tighten welfare and give more attention to outside sources of
Rep-
income when determining
He was a
the amount of
Republican.
welfare an individual is allowed.
Ronald Reagan.
Social workers here. Let me get rid of the TV and hide.
Specifically, the rules prevented adult males from residing with mothers and children who received the assistance. And so it was more beneficial for a mother to not be married and a man not to live in their home than for a family to be together. Poverty and lack of economic opportunity strongly plagued the black community, specifically with black men. So our black families by the 1980s were more than 50% fatherless. Black men had a high unemployment rate and lack of opportunities, and this was created by the system.
In the black communities of cities like Los Angeles, it's hard to imagine the situation could deteriorate further. The unemployment rate among black adults is double the average and climbing. In many places, desperation has turned to hopelessness.
Now, we by default tend to simply blame the white man for this, but this was much deeper than just blaming white people. Who we were before our ancestors were taken as slaves has been hidden from us, and the hatred and oppression that we went through was told to be solely for the color of our skin, but you must understand it was much deeper than that. This oppression and hatred was very much spiritual, and blaming white people doesn't help you understand what was going on. It only helps keep you trapped in the system's way of thought.
That's true.
Trapped in their system. The system was created by Satanists who were strongly against black men who descended from slavery. This bloodline is hated, were cursed, and by consequence, our people were oppressed. This is too deep to explain in this video, but this was the enemy. It should not be a blanket scapegoat of white people.
Yep.
This doesn't discount the fact that many in the white community were moved through spiritual hatred.
They are very close to the landed town norm, except in one respect.
1950s.
Jr. and his family are Negroes in an all-white community.
But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites. We have our home here, and if the colored move in and run real estate values down, there are a lot of us, the GIs particularly, who are going to be more or less stuck with their homes.
The point I'm making is black men were products of their environments and were being emasculated, and they were no longer taking responsibility in dealing with the circumstances, but they became victims of their circumstances.
Your Cynthia G need to learn about this before she put that stuff
This
out.
was quickly squashed and suppressed.
And other
It
ones,
was
other
very
black women
difficult
like
for the black
this.
man during these times. We cannot point
She need to
fingers
tell
at
the
them.
whole story.
These were highly oppressive and deceptive times. So let's keep going.
But you see what I'm saying? You see how important that is, and when it comes to race, and it's particular men as a general, but a particular target men, and it's commercialized. And so as they commercialize it, you know, you see, even again they leave the black men out, but they, when it comes to commercials, when it comes to couples, even if they're like a mixed race couple, they turn around. Stuff you used to see, you would never see a white man with a black woman kissing and stuff like that. They get hate mail, whatever. And I mean, that's just fact. I mean, I'm not trying to say if here and there, but this is the truth. And I'm going to show you a web page. I ain't going to play the video, but I'm going to show you what's going on. What happened to the black men when they're locked up? Just if you those of you, I'm going to show you this page right quick. The guy, his name is Information Man. If I can find his page, pull this up, and you know that's why it's so ignorant. Until you get a better understanding, you know, that people are not just saying something just to be saying it. Trying to find that video. Let me go.
Oppressive and deceptive times. So let's keep moving. Now we're in the 80s, and the system is still the enemy. But you know what happened? The system already knew what they were doing, and they decided now they could really recreate the black man. There was no real influence in the black community, in the black homes, and our real heroes were corrupted, whether they were in the church, abandoning the Bible, preaching the social gospel, whether they were in the streets pushing drugs, being paid to destroy their communities from within, or they were already controlled through organizations like Prince Hall Freemasonry and the Black Boule. The government placed guns and crack in our communities and allowed our communities to severely decline. Then from the rise of mass media, the system went into our neighborhoods, picked our enemies, and made them our heroes. The birth of gangster rap and hip-hop culture began, and this was something that we really felt like it was our own. But because we didn't understand the system, we didn't know that these heroes that were being presented to us were just tools of the same system that we were against. They used our own people as a Trojan horse to overcome us. Black culture became hip-hop culture, and it created a sense of immaturity in our black men that we have yet to overcome. For black men, everyone that you may have placed as a hero, that you may have placed posters of them on your walls, you watched their videos, adapted to their style, brought their clothes, went to the parties they threw, studied their lyrics, laughed at their jokes, dressed like them, took on their values, said you were going to make dead presidents represent you as well. All of these so-called heroes were and are in fact your enemies. They don't care about you. They care about themselves. The reason why they were so easily recruited is because they were already proven to not care. That's why they were selling drugs to their own community. The same way they can sell crack in their own community, destroying our mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, and they felt no way about it, is the same way they feel no way about becoming a famous celebrity, paying millions by destroying the communities through the promotion of debauchery and filth. And guess what? We all ate it up. They were being made rich to destroy our communities from within, and we were cheering it on. Our fathers were no longer in the home, and these men became our role models. It was a geniusly executed sinister plan against us. And most of us men, still in our 40s, still can't shake it off from us. And to add to this, they emasculated these men and made them do ritual homosexual acts. This is a rite of passage in order to be in the system. It's why we have seen all of our prominent men in dresses. I really want to address what's going on. These black men who we made our role models and heroes are complete sellouts. And they damage you and I as black men. And it is our responsibility to protect the next generation. But we have not, and this younger generation is even worse than before. So now we have guys like Little Nas X giving Satan a lap dance, or Russell Westbrook coming out with a clothing line wearing a dress. It's too much to mention. Black men in America have been conquered, and it's time that you hear it and understand it. You have been overcome and demasculated to a point where our sons no longer know what a man is any longer, and they are completely soft. The women are right now stronger than the men, which is why you are seeing movies about women warriors. The same system you thought you were rebelling against in hip-hop with NWA promoting aggression against the police, this same system that you thought you were rebelling against actually conquered you, and you celebrate the sellouts who they used. Yes, there is an agenda about emasculation. But it is us specifically as black men that this agenda has been targeted at the most, because it was our strength that they could not deal with. So understand what they did, and I will skip through it again briefly. After they gave us an illusion of freedom, they lured us into this system, gave us jobs, and allowed us to get educations, promoted some of their controlled bourgeois Negroes, and placed them as our goals to ascend to. After that program set in our minds, they took away all those same opportunities. They promoted agendas that removed the black man out of the homes, allowing their school system and their entertainment to program and raise up our next generation. They then destroyed the communities from within by planting drugs and guns directly in our communities, and they marked our streets by placing Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in every city, not as a memorial for us, but as a marker for them to know where they are attacking specifically, and so that others know that this is a black neighborhood. I mean, I can go to any city in America, and if I want to find the hood, all I need to do is find the MLK Boulevards. That wasn't by accident. They set up laws that imprisoned more of our men and left the next generation fatherless and angry. They filled that void with homosexual sellouts who promoted a lifestyle and mentality that destroyed us from within, removing our values completely, having us disrespect our women. Pretty much everything that would have been right for us, they promoted the complete opposite, and made these men our heroes and the leaders of our society. And we're still celebrating them today, talking about their money and giving them props and all that other garbage. Now we're totally controlled and manipulated, and we have raised up a next generation of black men that doesn't even know what a black man should look like or be like. We now have men that are submissive to their women and do not leave their homes. Men that are scared to combat evil because they're scared of losing their fake blackguard. And what we see now is either women or gay black men taking our leadership roles. This is all an agenda that has been used against us, because while they diffused us and made sure we are not a threat to them, they have been provoking and manipulating us to use our energy to bring about the change they desire in this world. Black people in America have an extremely high influence on culture and trends and social justice, but they are just echoing the voice of their puppet masters. And this has started because you, Mr. Black Man, have been neutralized. conquered. You have been so imprisoned that you believe that the only answer is actually the biggest weapon used against us. Yahushua.
I'm going to stop it right there. Now I'm going to show you a video that finishes off what he says. Introducing Information Man's video on biochemical racism.
We were born outdoors.
During this time, during the 1980s, they experimented in Philadelphia on black men.
This isn't a side job.
They did Cultum experiment. You think the Tuskegee Airmen back then was something? They did another experiment.
Because we were born outdoors.
They test experiment like black men like they're animal.
And on.
Like they were like a cat, a dog, a rabbit, a mouse. They did that to black people.
Information Man, please make sure to subscribe to his
I'm going to play a little bit of this, then I'm going to... But it's a wake-up call to black people. Anybody, it's a wake-up call. And it's the people who don't know about these things. And that's all I was pointing out. These things are actually happening. You know, it's gonna be a long video. Sorry, it went up past an hour. But when you're putting the presentation together, without you have to kind of point out what this leading to. That's why the video is kind of long, but I'm not going to go too long. Sorry, I'm already past an hour. But it's kind of a wake-up call. And I hope if it's a young black man or a young black female listen to this video, this is the reality. That this is what's going on. Need to understand the whole, where's the base of foundation. Or if you are friends with black people, or you're married to a black person, this is what they have to go through. And I always say this in the video. When you get to a certain degree with mainstream society as a black man, a black woman, you're visible. But when you get out of pocket, they put you back to being invisible. That's what he was saying in that second video towards the end. But I'm going to show him. I'm not going to play too much segment of it because it's kind of long. But this guy is called Information Man. Telling it, brother. But this is something you should be aware about. And when I did about the history of certain parts about racism and who's behind it, the agenda behind it, part of it is it collaborates behind the scene. But they plan like this, and they play on certain black people's mentality. In the Willie Lynch thing, you put the smart Negro against the dumb Negro. You put the light against the dark-skinned Negro. It's still in 2022. So it doesn't matter what your religious denomination is. It doesn't matter what your political association is. This has the history of you being a pick of your skin and the makeup of the nature who you are, and what the culture come up out of it in this country. That's what this video is about. This picture is from the Tuskegee Airmen. He's been showing this. These was the men that got Tuskegee. You probably heard about that. Yeah, long intro. But yeah, this is reality. This is something that other races of people are going to find out along the way. You can't hide and hide that. You can't, we don't want subjective, but at some point, the future young people are going to find this stuff out. You can't hide stuff. You can't twist it like they do and do other things. It's too deep. And someone's going to find the truth. And people from all walks of life, all races of nationality need to know the whole truth. Not just a segment of truth. Not just a little bit of truth and everything else is made up. You need to know the whole truth. Because one day when you stand before the great Almighty, you're going to have to tell the whole truth anyway. So you can't deny and twist it around. But yes. Oh shit. That's what this video was about. And and so I was kind of pointing that out, what the enemy looks like in that other community. Not that all the people, but it looked like this segment of people. What do they think in that community? It's out for themselves. And black people, you're being used. That's why I don't claim no affiliation. No Democrat, no Republican. Because at the end of the day, you're determined in this country on how far you can go. And are you really free? Are you really free? You can be patriotic, but are you free? And then you see a lot of Army veterans were patriotic, but they thought they were equal. But they had to get when you look in history, you had to get your drink and go in the back of the bus. That was your patriotic. That's what happened to black soldiers in the service. Why do you think we call a Tuskegee Airman? It was a segregated unit. In the Army, there was a segregation with Native Americans, African Americans, and they believe some Latinos, Hispanics. So, and they fought for the being honorable by this country, but at the same time, the reality of it is they live in the segregated army. And if you're in the military, you can only, and if you get someone who's a Klansman, who's up in there, or some person like that, what my friend told me, who was my age, said he encountered a Klansman, and when he was in the service, he's a sergeant. Like the military, though.
Of this story. Now, this story did break out in the news, and several people in mainstream news. I got to give a shout out to my man Rashad Ritchie.
Just something to think about.
Undisputed. The brother does great work over there on the Undisputed every day that he goes live. And I know him from WAOK, I think in Atlanta, I think that is, where he does radio work there. And I want to say shout out to everybody there. I want to say shout out to, once again, folks in New York, Chicago, Dallas, Texas. I want to say LA, Los Angeles. I know there's a hell of a lot going on in Los Angeles. And at first I wanted to convene a panel discussion today to address what's happening in Los Angeles, or what has been happening in Los Angeles. But I just could not get away from this particular subject matter because I just think it's very important for us to go over it. So maybe at some point in time we can have a panel discussion about this whole thing around black and brown coalitions, which I'm telling you right now, it does not exist. Of course, we had the debate between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. I'm going to tell you something right now. Herschel Walker is dumb as all get out. He gets up there with his Chuck E. Cheese badge or his toy badge. I mean, it was really crazy. And they both have problems. They both have problems with honesty. Raphael Warnock was asked about the situation about people being evicted, and he didn't really answer the question. He just got away from it. So what you have here is you have a really bad candidate in Herschel Walker, and you have another candidate in Raphael Warnock who's really not a good candidate. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he can't even knock off Herschel Walker, who talks like he's got marbles in his mouth, who can't talk, has lied. His son came out and told on him, and also this is the man that put a gun up against a woman. So both candidates are weak. Herschel being the worst of the two candidates, but both of them, if this is the best that the Democratic Party has to offer, they're in a lot of trouble. If this man can't even knock off Herschel that easy. So I just want to wanted to touch on that just briefly and get to this whole situation about the prison in Holmesburg, Philadelphia. So how many of you in the chat room, to get back on subject matter here, have heard about the prison in Philadelphia, Holmesburg, Philadelphia, by putting a 7, let's go with a spiritual number, by putting a 7 in the
That's what
chat
information may look like.
How many of you have actually even heard of this prison and know or are aware of the horrific experiments that's been going on there for a number of years? Put a 7 in the chat room if you are aware of this situation, or that, you know, maybe you just heard of the prison, but you're not aware of the dirty details that have been going on in this prison. And if I'm not mistaken, this prison, and let me do a little bit of more forensic on my part, this prison, if I'm not mistaken, has been around since the 1800s, going back from 1896 to about 1995. So it was closed in 1995, and not only with the horrific scientific Frankensteinish experiments that they were engaging in, but this was also a prison that was known to have a lot of riots, a lot of violence, and there was a lot of sexual abuse going on between inmates. And the guards in this prison allowed it to happen. That's right. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. They allowed it to go on. They allowed it to be a cesspool of sexual abuse on inmate to inmate, and guards looking the other way. This is why, black man, we can't afford to go to prison. We can't afford to be locked down in their system. That's why I do my best to encourage the guys that I deal with to never come back to it, to counsel them, to get them out of the despair of coming back and forth. Sitterism.
Hear what he said, black man?
Now, let's keep it real. There are guys in prison who have committed heinous crimes, and they do deserve to be in prison, even though I don't like to see people locked up like this, especially my people. But if you commit serious crimes, you're going to be locked up, you're going to pay the price, and with that comes certain circumstances within the prison system. But however, we know on the flip side of that, there are a lot of black men in prison who are innocent, didn't commit the crime, they've been chumped up on chumped up charges, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, they were misidentified and lied on. We've had white women in this world, historically, that have lied on black men and said that black men did something to them of a sexual nature, and black men did time. We got Hurricane Carter. Remember Hurricane Carter, the boxer, who spent a decade or more in prison, and then come to find out that he wasn't even the one that did it. And so then, let's keep this in mind, because somebody out there is going to say, why are you concerned about guys that are incarcerated? They did crime. Yes, there's people that have done crime, and there's people in there that didn't do the crime, but they got chumped up charges, and then there's people that are trying to appeal their cases. A lot of times in prison, I know this very well, better than most of you. A lot of times in prison, you have guys that come into prison, and they may not have family support. They may not have money for commissary. They may have not money for various basic things such as deodorant, because they can't order it from their packet. They can't order a package. They don't have the money. Then there are guys who have money, and they have money put on their books by their family, or money put on their books by their woman, or somebody out there that cares for them, right? So what happens to you when you're in prison and you're incarcerated, you become a vulnerable population in which people can pay you money to put experiments on you, you see. And I want everybody to make sure you listen to this program comprehensively today. Once again, I'll shout out people when I can. I won't do a lot of shout outs simply because there's so much information for me to show you. Because not only have they been doing Frankenstein experiments on black men going back to 1970 all the way to I believe up to the 90s, because it was closed down in 95. But a lot of these horrific experiments started on black men in the 70s. However, there were horrific things that happened in this prison during the 60s with riots and things of this nature, infighting and what have you. I want you all to listen to everything I'm going to tell you, because I'm going to slow it down. I notice if I slow things down, my words come out better, much clearer and concise. Everybody, thank you for being here. I'm going to give you the Information Man experience, and on my show, unlike many, you're going to get some solutions, some answers, some information that's going to open up your eyes, your mind. Over here, I do not want people to fight with each other in the chat room. If you have a difference of opinion, say what you mean and mean what you say. Be respectful of other people in the chat room. This is not, my channel is not a funny thing, not anything to play with. This is not a channel where we talk about the low-hanging fruit issues that do not matter. I had a video I showed you that black people in Los Angeles, California are being gentrified, and our power, that of lack of power, is being marginalized further and further away. Black people are becoming a disappearing act in California in terms of our power in our numbers. And you saw for yourself that you had that guy, Ron Havero. I made a mistake. I said Garcetti was the one that they said F